the new preamp tube for this Supro Delta King came in, and I put it in. I was about to test it and see if the tube's good, and I just figured I'd just make sure all the hardware was tight before I sent this out in the world. And the speaker jack and the input jack were loose and could not be fully tightened. Now these jacks look like Switchcraft. They're not. They're generics. If you want to get some Switchcraft 11As in there, you can. It's easily done. But if you really want to upgrade your Supro Tone King, go to Lowe's or Home Depot or any hardware store. You can usually get a bag of 5 or more of these little 3/8" tooth washers for about a buck. It'll be in the hardware section. Tooth washers, 3/8 inch. If you're doing this overseas, I don't know offhand what the metric equivalent is, but that's easily found out. I'm just going to put these back on by hand, and then I'm going to crank them down with a 1/2" socket wrench. And since ground is made to chassis via each one of these jacks, it's really nice to know that it's going to be on there tight and cannot come loose. And without the tooth washer, that cannot be the case. It just will not fully tighten all the way. All right, so let's see if I guessed right. I always forget which way is tight and loose on the ratchet. Okay. It would just keep spinning when I tightened it up before. Unless these jacks are made of pot metal, I should be able to turn it just till I can't turn it anymore. There we go. That output jack is now tight. Do the same thing for this input. You have to start it kind of by hand to let the teeth start to grab, because you don't want those wires inside to be spinning. At that point, the jack inside is not moving. I can feel it not move. And I can just crank this. And now, the input and output jacks are tight, and those ground connections are always there. That's a significant upgrade you can make for a very inexpensive amp for about $1. And, you know, however long it takes you to take the chassis in and out, say 15, 20 minutes total time. Less if you're really, really quick. But the actual addition of the lock washers to the tooth washers is easy, that anyone can do. Now, I said anyone can do that. I'm going to use these jacks as an example of what not to do, because you can see these on the camera. I see a lot of things come in all chewed up. You don't want to use something huge and toothed designed for plumbing. You don't want to use washers, some pliers rather, with the teeth. They chew up the nuts, and when you slip, you will gouge up the panels. You don't want to use flat pliers either. Even though you won't mar the nut, you will slip and you will damage the panel. You can use either an adjustable wrench like this, or a fixed wrench of the right size, but you have to make sure that you don't scrape, especially on an adjustable, where it's really hard to be completely flat. You don't want to scrape the stuff around it. So, almost every amp out there uses a Switchcraft style nuts all over the place, and that'll be the same nuts for the most potentiometers, American potentiometers. Use a 1/2" deep well socket an adjustable ratchet wrench. It's real easy to do. They'll tighten right up, they'll loosen right up, and there's no risk of damage to everything else. Now, if you have a cliff jack style, like you might find on a Marshall, which will have a black plastic surround and then a chrome nut, you want to go get a 5/32 or the metric equivalent socket nut, and that fits on those. And if you have metric pots rather than US, there are different ones out there. Most 16 millimeter pots, as opposed to 24 millimeter pots, will take either an 11 millimeter or a 10 millimeter socket. They'll look like this around the pots, just be a little bit smaller. So always make sure that matches. So the three that I use the most commonly for a socket wrench are 1/2 inch, 11 millimeters, and 10 millimeters. And then I've got the 5/32 for the Marshall style. And it's real simple. And if you have a Marshall or a Vox that has the big plastic nuts, then you can usually get those out with your fingers without using any tool whatsoever. If you over tighten them, they can crack. You got to find the right balance on those. But this video is drifting away from its intended point. So if you have these Supros or anything else where you have a jack where the connection to ground is made to chassis and it will not be tight, if it doesn't have those tooth washers, they're inexpensive and easy to add. PSA ended.